God bless you, my brothers and sisters. We are continuing in our 30 Days of Decrease series, and I want to commend you to read through the scriptures for today. They are John chapter 19, verses 17 through 27. And today we are fasting from self-confidence. Self-confidence is celebrated in nearly every sphere of life. It is praised as strength, rewarded as leadership, and assumed to be the source of progress. But scripture draws a critical distinction between confidence that is rooted in the self and confidence that is rooted in God. Lent invites us to examine that distinction with honesty. What we rely on most reveals where our true trust lies. Today addresses self-confidence not as obvious arrogance, but as misplaced reliance, the quiet assumption that our insight, discipline, or resolve is sufficient to sustain faithfulness. Self-confidence is trust placed primarily in one's own discernment, capacity, or certainty. Spiritually, it appears when we assume we see clearly, we understand fully, or possess enough resolve to remain faithful on our own strength. To fast from self-confidence is not to embrace insecurity or passivity. It is to release self-reliance as the foundation of faith and to recover our dependence on God. This fast calls us to humility, not doubting God's work in us, but refusing to replace trust in God with trust in ourselves. John tells us in chapter 19, verse 17, so they took Jesus, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of a skull. Jesus moves toward crucifixion without resistance or self-preservation. That's not confidence in ability, it's confidence in obedience. Pilate writes a sign and places it on the cross: Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. He intends this as mockery, but it becomes a proclamation. Jesus doesn't correct the sign. He does not defend his identity nor assert authority, but he trusts in the Father to vindicate truth. The soldiers divide Jesus's garment. They cast lots. They're fulfilling scripture in John chapter 19, verses 23 through 24. Even here, Jesus does not intervene. He does not try to orchestrate outcomes. He remains surrendered. Then John records a quiet moment amid the suffering in chapter 19, verses 26 through 27, when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby. He said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son, behold your mother." Jesus rather, entrusts relationships, not outcomes. He does not manage events, he commits care to God. Self-confidence seeks control. It assumes clarity before obedience and security before surrender. Jesus's posture stands in contrast. He does not rely on certainty of outcome, physical strength, moral superiority. He relies on trust. Peter's self-confidence collapses under pressure earlier in the narrative. Jesus here demonstrates in a different way that he can enter suffering without illusion, without bravado, and without retreat. His strength is flowing here from dependence, not from self-assurance. Scripture repeatedly warns that self-confidence can blind discernment. Trust in the self subtly displaces prayer, patience, and humility. Lent exposes this substitution and calls us back to reliance on God rather than on self. Self confidence competes with dependence on God, where reliance on the self increases. Trust in God quietly diminishes. Jesus models faithful humility, not weakness, but trust that rests fully in the Father. His obedience endures not because he believes in himself, but because he believes the Father is faithful. Lent retrains confidence. It transfers trust from internal certainty to external faithfulness. By fasting self confidence, we learn to pause before assuming that we know, to listen before acting, and to surrender outcomes that we cannot control. This fast deepens humility and restores prayer as a posture rather than a practice of last resort. So today invites honest assessment. Where have we relied on our own certainty rather than seeking God's guidance? Where has prayer become unnecessary because confidence felt sufficient? I want you to choose one decision today to approach with deliberate dependence. Pray before acting. Ask God not simply to bless your plan, but to direct your steps. Pray the prayer from Psalm 90. Establish the work of our hands. You want God to be the person who establishes the things that you do. And you cannot do that when your focus is on pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. You cannot do that when your focus is on what you were able to accomplish in your own strength. Because no matter how amazing what you were able to accomplish in your own strength is, doing it in God's strength would be better. Here are your questions for reflection before you pray today. Where has self confidence replaced dependence on God? How do I respond when my certainty is challenged? And what would it look like to trust God more fully today? God bless you, my brothers and sisters, and we'll see you on the next day of Lent.